A very fascinating story comes out on Thursday with Caleb Williams and his pre-draft process last year, plus a big extension in Baltimore and what should be the first of many in the coming months. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Friday, May 16 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. Like we had earlier this week or just the other day, the NFL schedule is officially out. It's kind of funny throughout the course of the day on Thursday, reading more about it, hearing from teams and executives. Not as many complaints this year, I will say, which is a bit surprising. We did find out on Thursday that, for example, the Vikings, who have back-to-back international games in different countries, they were actually okay with doing it. So not as many complaints this year than usual to this point, but we do have some other news to talk about here today on the show that is not schedule related. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? It's great to see you. How's everything going?
Things are going good, Ari. Yeah, it's exciting times out in the NFL. I got an opportunity to spend the day with Amon-Ra, Equinemius, St. Brown, members here of the 33rd team with our podcast stuff, and we're shooting some stuff with the rookies out at the NFL PA event with Panini. Pretty fun stuff. So make sure you're subscribed to them as well, St. Brown Pod. You'll get to see that at some point. But while we were there, we started talking about this kind of interesting story that seemingly came out of nowhere in the middle of May. And it's actually going back a year. And it's talking about Caleb Williams. There's an upcoming book coming out called American Kings, a biography of the quarterback from ESPN senior writer, gonna butcher this, Seth Wickersham.
Yeah, one of the great. Come on, Ben.
We're going to keep rolling with that. In this book, he talks about a lot of quarterbacks, the different processes, all this kind of stuff. But he actually had the opportunity to speak with Caleb Williams, and he got some interesting thoughts out of him. And his father, for that matter, Carl. They basically explained how he didn't want to be a Bear. A lot of that coming from his father. He had an opportunity to meet Kevin O'Connell, was really, really excited about the Vikings. And then there was this whole thing of basically the dad being like, quarterbacks go to die in Chicago. You don't want to be the quarterback there. There was this whole idea of, is he going to go to the UFL so he can try to circumvent like the draft? There's a whole lot of stuff going on with this. So it was clearly a non-story at the end of the day, because that's where he is. He seems happy, this, that, and the other. But there's a whole lot to unpack with this story. How surprised are you that like this is coming out now, and like how much of this was swirling in the private conversations last year?
All right, so I have a lot of reaction to this. And first of all, let me just start with, in this story, which I think people decided not to pick up on, later in the story, it does mention that Caleb Williams did have a pre-draft visit with the Bears and people in the organization. And after doing that, he said, I can do it for this team. I'm going to the Bears. I want to be with them. So that is some important context in all of this. But just dating back to last year, a lot of this, especially like in my shoes and other people who do this type of a role with information, you get a lot of stuff where you just can't really say much of it. And last year, Caleb Williams, during the pre-draft process, we knew the Bears had the number 1 overall pick. We knew that they wanted them, but we also knew, dating back to the Bears even getting the number 1 overall pick, that Caleb did not have an agent. He had his father, and his father is very controlling, has a business mind. And like you even see in the story, nobody really picked this up, but like he was talking about in the story, he tells Seth Wickersham that when you look at the current CBA, Carl Williams basically says the rookie camp is just unconstitutional. Later added, the CBA is the worst piece of bleep I've ever read. It's the worst in sports history. So behind the scenes last year, we knew all of this. We knew that his dad was very, very concerned about just the overall structure in the NFL. We did not know about the entire, he would not want to play for the Bears part, but we knew his dad was somebody who was not like a regular agent who was like, this is the way the process works. Wherever you got picked, be happy you got picked. You're part of the NFL now. That was not his dad. We knew that. Now, a few things over here in the story that were interesting. The Vikings part is interesting only because the team picking at number 2 last year happened to be the Commanders, who also hired Cliff Kingsbury, who's also very close to to Caleb Williams, of course. So I would think that if Caleb wanted not to go to Chicago, the easy answer was, I want to go to the next pick. So I was surprised that he's talking about a team that was scheduled to pick, of course, much later in the first round. The Vikings eventually ended up at number 11 and trade up to number 10 to take J.J. McCarthy. But that part was very interesting. But, Caleb Williams having this thought in his head that the Bears cannot produce quarterbacks, it's not the craziest things when you think of the history of the Bears. I mean, the Bears have been around since 1920. That's a long time. They have never had a 4,000 plus yard quarterback. They've never had a quarterback who threw for 30 plus touchdowns in a season. And I'm sure he saw the coaching staff that was there the last couple of years. When they drafted Mitch Trubisky, that was John Fox. John Fox was fired after a year. When it was Justin Fields, that was Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy was fired after a year with the quarterback. So he saw Matt Eberflus, and maybe he thought also this is a lame duck head coach. I'm being put in a bad position. And in the end, he was kind of right because Matt Eberflus, of course, was fired during the year. So the thoughts over here that were written and that they thought about last year, now we know in public, he ended up being right. And the fact that, they talk about in the article just last year, Shane Waldron and all the offensive coaching staff did not watch film of Caleb Williams. It makes Caleb's year last year even more impressive when you consider the coaching situation and the offensive line situation. And as a result, I do want to give the Bears some credit here because they have changed a lot with their history here over the last several months. Firing a head coach in year, which is what they did with Matt Eberflus, had never been done in their history before, and they did that. Going out there and getting the best head coach on the market, which was Ben Johnson, and giving him as much money as they did for a first-time head coach is not Bears-like, and it's not like most NFL teams right now in this league. So they are changing right now as we speak, and they know they have something special here with Caleb Williams, and the structure that they have positioned him this year is obviously much, much better. But overall, the entire story about just the father and his involvement, Caleb still does not have an agent. If you remember last year, I think it was while he was still at USC, there were some wild reports out there that Caleb with his next team is going to ask for equity in the organization. Like there was some crazy stuff out there. That thing was not true in the end, but that was stuff. There was stuff to that nature that the father was like, if my son is this good, why should he be signing this type of a 4-year deal? Why should he be going to whichever team has the number 1 overall pick? And again, we have not seen anybody do this since Eli Manning in 2004. But Ben, I am a believer in the near future, we are going to have a player who knows he is so good and he sees the team at number 1 and he's going to be like, I do not want to go there. And we're going to have that type of frustration here in the near future in a draft at some point. I have a feeling it's happening. These kids who are coming in, Ben, they understand that this is a business now because of the NIL element. So I'm telling you, we're going to have that point. I think if Shedeur Sanders was Cam Ward this year, he would have played that game potentially. So obviously Shedeur did not have that level of talent to be able to do that. But if that would have happened, if Deion's son was to that level, I think he would have pulled it off this year. So I think it's going to happen here in the near future. Remember, Marvin Harrison last year didn't do anything throughout the pre-draft process. No combine, no pro day, nothing. He was like, I'm a top pick. You pick me based off my college film, and that's it. So these guys realize they have some power here, and it's going to happen eventually. Caleb considered it last year, ended up pulling away from it, but if he really didn't like Chicago and his dad being a good dad was like, you know what? I care about you, son. I'm going to make some noise up here. And who cares about it? We're going to make noise. We're going to make sure you don't go there. It could have gotten really, really interesting. So luckily for him, he liked the situation in Chicago. I do think Chicago is a franchise that is moving in the right direction right now. And moving into this year, I don't think there's any other quarterback in football, young quarterback, who is in a better position going into year 2 than Caleb Williams. So we'll see what he does this year. But the Bears have definitely changed the way they handle things over here in the last several months. But this was quite the story that came out over here on Thursday. And by the way, let's just wrap up with this part of the story. Week 1, Monday Night Football, Bears and Vikings. So that's pretty awesome.
The NFL, always. So, but rolling back here for a second. So what you're saying is Arch Manning has the chance to do the funniest thing ever in a year or two.
I'm not going to rule it out. I mean, I don't want to pick a team of year and just put them on blast. But if a team in the NFL right now ends up at number 1 that year and they're just a dysfunctional situation, him pulling off an Eli Manning, which is what his uncle did, back in '04, it's not the craziest thing in the world. That was, I mean, the Eli Manning thing was done by Archie Manning in alliance with his son. Of course, Archie is the grandfather here to Arch. So it would be full circle to everything, but I'm not even saying it's going to be Arch. It's going to be a different player at some point. These guys have much more power nowadays. They know how much money they can make anyways in the college game of NIL. Things are changing. It is changing. And if they don't want to be in a situation, the team is bad, the roster is bad, the owner is bad, whatever it is, they're going to make noise. It's going to happen here soon. I'm telling you.
Do you think the NFL is already preparing for this?
I don't know if they're preparing for this, but if you're a situation where you're a team and whatever the situation is, whether it could be ownership, it could be the front office, it could be a coaching staff, it could be these NFLPA report cards. I mean, they have changed the game like crazy because there were things within buildings that players hated, and all of a sudden we started getting these report cards, and now it's getting better. So all these things eventually come back to these players who are going into the draft. And one of the things that's happening more and more, Ben, a lot of these top players in the draft do not have agents. Cam Ward this year did not have an agent. Shador Sanders, whatever, different player, but did not have an agent. Again, Caleb Williams, no agent. Marvin Harrison Jr., no agent. It's one of these things that's happening here more and more in the NFL where those traditional agents who are NFLPA certified, who basically just tell the player, hey, do this, you'll get drafted here. This is the best part about it, getting drafted, wherever it is. Like, some of these players have a different vision than that, you know? So they're going to the NFL with their own people over here, whether it's family members or family lawyers, whatever it is, different people over here who have no NFLPA certification, and they're moving forward like that. And they're going to do it under their own terms. Will it work? I still think it's going to be very hard to work because the NFL, the way it works, these owners and these teams are like, it's a privilege to be drafted by us. Don't you dare make it look like that. But if you're a player and you start making enough noise, maybe, just maybe, it's going to work.
Do you think that part of that decision to not go with the agent is coming from the family and saying, look, you can keep more money if you don't go out and say you're going to give a percent to this guy?
I hope it's not that reason. I hope it's not, oh, you could save the 3%, because an agent does do way more than just negotiate a contract. And like we spoke about last week, the rookie contracts are pretty straightforward. It's not that hard to negotiate those, but they do so much more. Like all the pre-draft visits, all the flights, and getting everything in order, and talking to teams, and having those back channel conversations with scouts and executives and coaches, and all these different things, speaking even to reporters. I mean, you'll see, I mean, I don't want to say any names of reporters, but a lot of these reporters, they'll put the agent names in the tweet. You know what I mean? You see that happening a lot, and that's more the agent making sure that your client's name gets out there so the fans see it and the rest of the league sees it. Like, there's a lot of different behind the scenes things over here that agents do over here, that it's not so simple. It's not really just about the 3%. There's a lot more. But at the same time, if you're a top prospect and you're going to be picked at number one, you don't need all those pre-draft visits and all those other things. Like, you could survive all of that. Eventually, when it comes to a second contract, they're going to have to put together a really, really good team, obviously. But a lot of these players are doing it differently. Even Lamar Jackson, dating back to 2018, no agent, had his mom, has a few lawyers working with him. Of course, he already signed one big contract. There's a whole discussion about the way it was handled to take it that long. But point is, there's a lot more players doing this nowadays when they realize they have power and they can do it their own way. And again, I'm just telling you, it's going to happen at some point. 26 draft, 27 draft, 28 draft. At some point, we're going to have a repeat of Eli Manning and John Elway, which obviously were decades ago.
It'll be interesting. All right.
Caleb was close. Ben, Caleb was close, though. Like, that was a real thing last year. Like,
okay, let's stick with this for a second here, because it's interesting. Like, we say close, but like, what do you think was going to be the first thing that snaps? Like, what was going to be, what were we going to hear first? It was like, what is it going to be, rumblings of like, Caleb really might, like, was this, like, could he have even done the UFL thing? Like, that seems
no, that was too much. That was just trying to find any different solution. But let's say it this way. If the number one overall pick last year was the Browns coming off the 1-15 and 0-16 year, this would have happened. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say over here. Like, if it was that type of a situation where Hugh Jackson is still the head coach after all of that, then this would have happened last year. And basically, it would have been going nuclear. It would have been like, I'm not playing for your city. And Eli Manning, which was crazy back in '04. There are videos on YouTube which you could watch. Like the media coverage of that was crazy. We have not had it happen yet in the social media age. Like it would have been a complete nuclear attack by Caleb Williams and his father. Like nobody really knows him that much, but he is somebody who, if he has to go all out and do something, like the USD people will tell you, like he was very, very on demand over there about things that have to go right for his son. So he would have went all out to make sure they're not drafting me. Go trade, go pick Jaden, take somebody else, do whatever it is. He would have made it happen. But at the end, like we read in the story, he went to Hallis Hall. He meets Ryan Poles, meets everybody else. And he's like, you know what? This place isn't that bad. They do have some pieces, and I'm going to go there and try to fix it. Year one didn't work, but the hands that he's in year two right now is obviously much better.
Okay, one more thing before we move on to the next topic here. Have there been other potential first overall picks in recent years that you think were actually close to this similar situation? You don't have to necessarily say names, but like, is this something that actually bubbles under the radar more often than we realize?
I don't recall one of this magnitude coming up here in recent years. Like Cam Ward was excited to go number one this year. I'm trying to go through the entire number one overall picks over here in recent history, and let's see if we get it up over here. I don't recall like Baker Mayfield, no. Bryce Young, no. Caleb Williams, no. Um, no, I don't recall any of those guys in recent history having that. The last one was Eli Manning back then. I'm trying to think if there was anybody else, but none of them are
So hoping you'd
coming
be
to
like
mind
Derek
right
Fisher
now.
or something.
No. Um, no, I don't think there were any. Marvin Harrison was interesting because he didn't care where he was drafted, but he was like, I'm not gonna let you guys go through my medicals over here and go through everything. Like you guys know what I did in college. This is who I am. By the way, Caleb was the same way last year. He only let the Bears see his medicals. Like that was it. So these players are changing the way they are, but we have not had that. Like we're gonna have a team be so bad one year and then have a bunch of bad stories going on around them that year as well, where the number one overall pick is this good and so amazing, where he's going to have that power to say, I don't want to go to you. And it's going to become a big story. But unless, again, I don't have it in front of me, but I don't recall any in recent history, aside from Caleb, which there were those rumblings last year. But aside from that, no, I don't recall any.
All right, I want to go back here for a second to a story we didn't get to cover from Wednesday because we had the schedule coming out and that completely just absolutely washed away anything else that was going on. And that is a big contract that was handed out to the king. Mr.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry is extending with the Baltimore Ravens on a 2-year, $30 million contract. $25 million is guaranteed. This is kind of a shocking note. This is the biggest contract ever given to a running back over 30 years old. It's
Why is that shocking? I don't think that's shocking.
It's not shocking, but when you see the number and then you put it in perspective, it's like, I mean, you can sit back and you can think through it, but like,
I think
it just
running
feels
backs,
weird to see it.
there used to be a time when running backs in their 30s did get paid. It was never $15 million a year. That's kind of where the correlate. Yeah.
True. Yeah. So I guess, what do you think of the deal? What do you think of the details that you've seen so far?
Yeah.
Do you think this is going to be a contract that ages well for Baltimore? Do they really see this as like more of like a, hey, we're going to give you a little, boost here for such a good season you had last year. We think you'll be good this year. We'll see after that.
So let's just give the context as to what happened here. So last year, he goes as a free agent, signs this 2-year, $18 million deal. Obviously has an incredible year in Baltimore. The marriage made so much sense. Like as soon as he signed, we knew this was going to work, right? So 1,900 plus rushing yards was awesome with Lamar. But that 2-year, $18 million deal that he signed last year, it was front loaded. So he made $11 million last year, plus these incentives that he hit as well. But this year, he was scheduled just to make $7 million in the final year of his deal, which is peanuts for what he did last year and really peanuts for the running back market as well right now. So the Ravens, realizing that, they quickly moved on over here and they did this 2-year, $30 million extension. And essentially, these next 2 years, he's going to be on the books for $12.5 million each year. Then the last year of that contract, is essentially non-guaranteed. So it's not exactly $15 million per year. That's what it is in the new money. But when you include the old money, the $7 million left over, the averages will come out to $12.5 million this year, $12.5 million next year. And then there's basically a non-guaranteed year on the back end, which is essentially like a team option. But this just made too much sense. First of all, they had to reward him based off last year, but also because he just had $7 million left over. But we saw Saquon Barkley, who was the other big free agent signing last year at the position, have 2 years left on his contract and get a big extension here this offseason at $20 million per year. So two of the big running back signings from last year have already gotten new deals on top of the one that they signed in free agency last year. So it just makes sense for all sides. Keep this going. Make sure he's happy. And just one note on Derrick Henry, the amount of wear and tear for a guy of his build, for him to still be going at this age, it's really a testament to first just how much work he puts in year round, but it's also just incredible to think about that a person with that type of a style could still be going this strong. For him to have that many carries last year, have over 1,900 yards, and still be going strong, it's kind of unheard of. And he is truly one of one. There's a reason why he's called King Henry, and he's right now inside the top 20 in career rushing yards in NFL history. If he has about 1,315 yards this year, he vaults into the top 10 in NFL history. So what a career he has had. And assuming he does that this year, I think he's basically at a point where he's going to be a surefire Hall of Famer as well. But big picture over here, not even about the running back market. This is the first of what should be several extensions for the Baltimore Ravens here in the coming weeks and months. We obviously have Tyler Linderbaum, their center. They declined this fifth-year option a few weeks ago. That was because they're working on an extension that will make him the highest paid center in NFL history. Kyle Hamilton, he still has 2 more years left on his deal. If they do an extension now, which I believe they want to, that will make him the highest paid safety in NFL history. Marlon Humphrey needs a new deal as well, as does Lamar Jackson, which we spoke about over here on the show about a week ago. His cap hits after this year for the final 2 years of his contract is $74.5 million in 2026 and $74.5 million in 2027. The easiest way to lower those numbers is by doing an extension. So we'll see if they start working on that. John Harbaugh, the head coach, mentioned at the owners' meetings that whenever a deal gets done, Lamar will become the highest paid player in NFL history. That means surpassing the $60 million per year with Dak Prescott in Dallas. One more extension candidate as well in Baltimore if they want to do it. Isaiah Likely is entering the final year of his contract at tight end. Mark Andrews is still on the team, but I think it is safe to say that Likely is the future at that position. So Derrick Henry is done. That is great news, but Baltimore is going to be dishing out a lot more money here in the coming weeks and months.
Dude, you had it was up there for you on a T. You could have just said he's likely the future for the
I
Ravens.
did think about that. I did think
you thought about it.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as you thought about it, that's the important thing. As long as it crossed the mind, you're like, how dumb and corny of a joke should I make that I know Ben would make otherwise?
It's like my James Gladstone joke from a few weeks ago where he had the Stones do the trade, and that was a good one.
That's an all-timer for you. It's an all-timer for you. All right, guys. Happy weekend. It's here. The NFL offseason continues to roll on. I know we're getting into the quote-unquote quieter parts of the offseason, but not for us. We've got some exciting stuff coming up. We have a huge guest coming on Tuesday. It has already been recorded. We are both very excited for that to come out. You will want to make sure that you are listening, that you are watching. Make sure you're subscribed so you see that when it pops into your feed on Tuesday morning. And Ari, unless there's anything else you want to hit, let's let the weekend start.
Yep, that'll do it here for our Friday, May 16th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. Like Ben said, we'll be back on Monday, and on Monday after the episode is over, we will be revealing who is that spotlight guest here on the show. One more little tease. We mentioned it's an executive last time. We said that, I think, on Wednesday. This is an executive from the AFC West. That will be your last little hint over here as we go into the weekend. We will see everybody here on Monday morning.